I'll never forget the first time I saw the road. It was late afternoon, and the sun was dripping gold all over the city. The air smelled of roasted corn and distant rain. I was just a kid then, perched on my uncle's old rickety bicycle. The seat was cracked, and it squeaked every time I moved, but I didn't mind. We were on our way home from the market, a sack of oranges strapped to the handlebars, when I noticed them. People were running, not jogging, not speed walking. They were running, suits flapping like loose kites in the wind, shoes clacking against the pavement in a frantic rhythm. Sweat poured down their faces, glistening in the sunlight, and their expressions. I'll never forget their faces. They looked strange, like they were both winning and losing at the same time. Imagine someone who's just found treasure, but realizes they can't carry it all. It was like that. "What are they doing?" I asked, leaning forward on the bike to get a better look. "They're on the road," my uncle said, his voice low, almost like he was afraid they'd hear him. He shook his head slowly, his lips tightening. "That road, it never ends." I blinked. "What do you mean it never ends?" "All roads end." He chuckled, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Not this one, my boy, not this one." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but when I turned back to look at his face, I saw the truth in his eyes. Back then, I didn't understand. But years later, when I found myself lacing up my running shoes, ready to step onto that same road, his words echoed in my mind like a warning I hadn't taken seriously. The first few steps were easy, almost too easy. It felt like a game. Every time I ran faster, something good happened. A little money here, a small promotion there. It wasn't much at first, but it was enough to keep me going. People on the sidelines would cheer. "You're doing great! Keep running!" they shouted, clapping and smiling like they genuinely cared. It felt good, addictive even. Their approval, the rewards, the feeling of progress, it was all so satisfying. I thought, this is it. This is how people win. I was hooked. But then something strange started happening. No matter how fast I ran, no matter how much effort I put in, I was never ahead. There was always someone in front of me. Someone with a bigger house, a fancier car, a life that seemed perfect. Someone richer, more successful, more admired. I told myself I just need to try harder, so I started running harder, faster, longer. My legs ached, my chest burned, but I didn't stop. I stopped calling my family. My mother's voice became a distant memory. My friends, I told myself I'd catch up with them later. Food became something I grabbed on the go, usually cold and tasteless. Sleep? Overrated. Who had time for sleep when there was so much to chase? Just one more year, I told myself. One more year and then I'll rest. But 1 year turned into 2, 2 turned into 5. Before I knew it, a decade had passed. My phone was full of missed calls I never returned. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, tired, hollow, and older than I should have been. The road had me in its grip and I couldn't see a way out, or maybe I didn't want to see it. Then came the breaking point. One day, I spotted an old friend on the road. His name was Kwesi. We had grown up together, sharing dreams that felt too big for the world we came from. We used to laugh so hard it hurt, talk about the futures we wanted, and swear we'd never lose ourselves, no matter what life threw at us. But that day, I barely recognized him. He looked like a ghost. His clothes, once sharp and neat, now hung loose on his frame as if they belonged to someone else. His skin was pale and slick with sweat, his cheeks hollow, and his eyes, a dull, lifeless gray, looked like they had seen too much. He moved like he was carrying an invisible weight, each step heavier than the last. His breath came in short, wheezy gasps, as though the road itself was squeezing the air out of him. "Kwesi!" I called, my voice a mixture of shock and desperation. He turned his head slowly, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of recognition. A weak, faint smile crept onto his cracked lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. He tried to wave but staggered instead, his legs buckling under him. He collapsed to the ground in a heap, his body hitting the pavement with a sickening thud. I froze, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. For a split second, I thought, this can't be happening. And then I looked around. There were people everywhere, runners of all kinds. Some were dressed in expensive suits, others in sweat-soaked athletic wear. But none of them stopped. Not one person paused to help. They just kept running, their eyes fixed ahead as if Kwesi's fall wasn't even worth noticing. "Somebody stop!" I yelled, my voice cracking, but the runners moved around him like water flowing around a rock, avoiding him without a second glance. I crouched down beside him, my hands trembling as I tried to shake him awake. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of myself in his eyes, a reflection of someone I didn't recognize, a stranger who had been running so long they didn't even know what they were chasing anymore. And then it hit me, like a punch to the gut. Was this my future? Was this where the road was leading me? Was I running myself into an early grave too? I looked up at the endless stretch of pavement ahead, its promise of rewards and approval now feeling more like a trap than a goal. The pounding of shoes on asphalt, the relentless rhythm of the runners, it all felt oppressive, suffocating. For the first time, I saw the road for what it truly was. And I was terrified. Then came the wise woman. That's when I met her, the woman who changed everything. She was sitting by the side of the road, under the shade of a large, ancient tree whose branches stretched wide as if embracing the world. Her hands moved with a steady rhythm, weaving a basket from thin, flexible strands of straw. The golden afternoon light seemed to dance around her, and the air felt different in her presence, still and peaceful, like time had slowed down just for her. I almost missed her at first. Amid the chaos of pounding feet and hurried breaths, her stillness was so out of place it was almost invisible. But then she looked up, her eyes meeting mine. They weren't just eyes, they were windows, deep, knowing and calm, as if they had seen all the roads and all the runners and had already made peace with it all. "You look tired," she said. Her voice was soft but carried a weight that stopped me in my tracks. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "Everyone's tired. It's the road." She tilted her head, her expression kind but unyielding. "Then why don't you step off?" Her words hit me like a slap. I blinked, trying to process what she had just said. "Step off?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "Are you crazy? If I stop, I'll lose everything." She didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She just kept weaving, the soft rustling of straw filling the silence between us. Then she looked at me again, her gaze piercing. "You're already losing. Look at you." Her words felt like a mirror, forcing me to see myself for the first time in years. My hunched shoulders, my hollow cheeks, the dark circles under my eyes. I looked like someone running on fumes, someone who had forgotten how to live. "When's the last time you slept?" she asked gently. "When's the last time you laughed? When's the last time you truly lived?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. She smiled then, a small, warm smile that wasn't judgmental, just understanding. She patted the ground beside her. "Come sit, just for a moment." I hesitated, glancing back at the road. The runners blurred into streaks of motion, their rhythmic pounding echoing in my ears. My mind screamed at me to keep going, to ignore her, to run harder and faster. But my legs felt like lead, my chest ached, my heart felt heavy, and for the first time, I couldn't find the strength to keep moving. I sat down beside her. The ground was cool beneath me, and the shade of the tree felt like a balm against the heat of the road. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She just kept weaving her basket, her movements unhurried, her presence radiating calm. It was the first time in years that I wasn't running, and it felt like I could finally breathe. Then came the realization. Sitting under that tree, something shifted in me. At first, it was just a faint whisper of a thought, but the longer I sat, the clearer it became. The road wasn't magical. It didn't give rewards. It only took. I let my gaze drift to the endless stream of runners pounding along the road. Their faces, flushed and strained, blurred together into a single, desperate mass. I thought about the promotions, the achievements, the fleeting moments of applause I'd collected over the years. They had felt so important at the time, but now, in the quiet shade of the tree, they seemed hollow. Shiny objects that had demanded everything but given nothing lasting in return. The faster you ran, the more the road demanded. Your time, your energy, your health, your dreams. It was a cruel master, dangling promises of fulfillment just out of reach, urging you to chase harder, run faster. And the scariest part? The road didn't end. It wasn't a straight path to a destination. It just looped over and over like a hamster wheel. No matter how fast or far you ran, you'd always end up right back where you started, just more exhausted and worn down. I turned to the woman beside me, watching her hands as they moved steadily over the basket she was weaving. There was no rush in her movements, no frantic urgency. She seemed entirely at peace, grounded in the simple act of creating something with her own hands. She must have sensed my thoughts because she spoke without looking up. "True success isn't about running faster," she said, her voice calm but firm, like the roots of the tree that sheltered us. "It's about knowing when to stop. It's about choosing what matters." Her words felt like they were unraveling the knots in my mind. All this time, I had been measuring success by speed and distance, by how much I could achieve before collapsing under the weight of it all. But what if she was right? What if success wasn't about running harder? What if it was about stepping off the road entirely and finding a new path? A path where the things that truly mattered could finally take root and grow. I looked back at the road, at the blur of runners still chasing their endless loops. And for the first time, I didn't feel envy or urgency. I felt free. I stepped off the road that day. It wasn't easy. People called me lazy, stupid, a quitter. But for the first time in years, I slept. I laughed. I lived. Now I spend my days helping others step off the road. Because here's the truth. The road only promises hustle. But life promises joy. So if you're running yourself ragged, let me ask you this. When will you step off? As you step off the road, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Cheers. Have a good one.